Welcome to Fairy Tale Access, where the head fairy's quest is to prove that fairy tales do exist in actual time rather than once upon a time. Together, we will unravel the heroes, young and old, who turn dreams into reality. These are the people who still believe in happily ever after. The discoveries will bend even our most cynical non-believers into believing in fairy tales. Hi, welcome to Fairy Tale Access. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to Joanna White, the author of Hunter, a Valiant novel. And this is Christian fantasy at its absolute best. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. I really enjoyed your book. I think I read it in one day.
Wow. Thank you.
It was so fast-paced, but it was brutal.
Yeah, I have a habit of writing that way from what I hear.
And you look so sweet. Totally not what I expected. I was like, wow, she's so conniving and evil.
I take that as a compliment.
Well, it was really well done. The level of forgiveness in this book, though, I don't know if that's achievable.
I would hope that it is, but that plays a big role in my life as a Christian, so I wanted to bring that out in my novel. It's probably not humanly achievable because we have a tendency to be selfish people sometimes, but that's like, you know, what we ultimately always want to strive for. That's what I want to strive for. So
I think there were different circumstances that you put into the novel of how things occurred that really made it more believable. And where forgiveness could have been achievable because we couldn't fully blame the actors.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that.
I don't want to give away the story.
Without spoilers, yeah, that's actually why I added that in there, because if without that, I don't think it would have been possible, and it needed to be possible for the sake of the story. So, yeah.
And that whole way that your enemies can turn into your friends, that was
I love
so well done.
Thank you.
It was, and how people can change, you know, because of the people that they're meeting and interacting with.
Yeah, I believe that people can change, and like in my life, it's, you know, because of God, like He changes us, but the changes that He can make in us are amazing, far beyond anything we could do on our own. And I really wanted, that's a huge theme in the book. So
definitely. How did you come up with such an astounding but horrific tale? Like, there's some horrific things that happen.
Yes. Well, the main inspiration came from a combination of Mulan from Disney and the Hunger Games, actually. But I felt like the Hunger Games was more aimed toward teens. And so I was like, let's make this a little bit more mature, right? And, you know, make it adults. And I loved the Mulan side. So I was like, okay, I have to throw only men into this prison instead of Hunger Games. You know, it's a bunch of kids. And that's where the Mulan aspect came in at, where she had to disguise herself as a man to get in there. And I like, for me, the world is very harsh. It's very cruel. We live in what we call as Christians a sin-fallen world. But there's hope and there's light within that darkness. And so to me, in order to really show how bright the light is, you have to have the darkness first. And that's kind of how I write, especially with my fantasy novels. And so sometimes, yes, I do get a lot darker than most Christian authors consider okay. But I believe that that's necessary because the light's not going to be bright if you don't have darkness with it, you know, to bring it out. So that's kind of where my writing style comes in at.
You definitely do that part well. Now, how long have you been writing for?
Since I was 10, actually. The summer before my 6th grade year, I wrote my very first story. And I've been writing ever since. It wasn't very good, but, you know, hey, I was 10. So I was just mostly hobby writing. Like, my friends would come up with these story ideas, and I was the only one who could write them into a book. So that's what we did. And then we'd read them together. And, you know, it was just a passion from readers, you know, wanting to read what ideas that we had, for books. And so that's kind of where it stemmed from.
Also, the way you did it was, I'm not sure how to describe it, but it definitely follows the Christian fantasy writing path, but you veered from it, not only in like the horrific parts of the tale, but the way that you brought characters together and relationship, ideology, the way people think about things. That was really good. So what's your background?
You. I grew up in a Christian household, actually. My uncle's a pastor, and I've always been a Christian as long as I can remember. So I don't have that traditional, Christian story where you came to Christ at a certain time in your life. Like, it's always been a part of me. I did have moments in my life where I, questioned my faith and, went on a journey with God to kind of explore my faith a little more and grew because of that. But I've always, my parents divorced when I was very young, so I grew up very quickly, and I've always just been aware that, God never promised us that this life would be easy. And so the world can be very harsh and cruel sometimes. But that's just the world that we live in because it is fallen. And, but we still have, like, as Christians, we have the hope of Christ. And so I want to share that hope with other people. We should want to do that. Because without Christ, the world is very bleak sometimes. And so eventually my writing got to a point where I wanted to share that hope with other people. And I guess I've always just been intrigued by, I've been very inspired by shows like The Vampire Diaries and the originals and even Game of Thrones, even though most Christians would never watch that. And it's bad in a lot of ways. But I love sometimes a little grittiness, because to me, it's not gritty, it's realistic. The world can be like that sometimes. And so I feel like if you don't include that, your books aren't realistic and they're not going to reach people that they need to reach. So you have to write a little bit more, not secular per se, but you have to write things that secular people are going to want to read. You can't just make it all, kitties and rainbows all the time. And so to me, that's why I write the way that I do.
It's a definite twist. It's somewhat like Frank Peretti, his writing. But it's not in any way preachy like he can be. It's more, and I like that you didn't directly quote like the Bible. You gave stories that were similar to the Bible stories and you built on that, but it was the same essence, which made it more believable and more tuned in, I think, for fantasy readers in general, but it had great themes throughout.
Thank you. I hope so. That's my goal with it. I'm really big on world building. And so I was thinking, okay, hypothetically, if other worlds did exist, they would have, God would have reached out to them some way. And so I was like, how would that way have been? And so I liked the idea that they still had like a Bible of sorts. And then it was about, okay, the realism with the world building that I had done, the people that were oppressed, would they have had access to this or would not? And so then I came up with, it was just the characters and the realism behind the access that they would have had and if they would have known about it or not. And obviously they're in a really dark situation. So there's a couple of characters in there that are like, adamant that God does not exist, and they're really kind of grumpy, and you can't really blame them because they're being hunted and almost killed every day. So it's like, I liked I wanted to show diversity between the different beliefs and stuff.
You definitely did. And the great part about it, I think, for the Christian readers is, it's so hard to explain it without giving something away, but it's similar to different stories that they've heard throughout their lives reading the Bible. But it's not. And it's just like, but there's that, just like those couple of words and you're like, oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah, I actually realized that the entire Valiant series, when I got ready, my husband and I were planning the final two books, and we didn't realize this. We didn't plan it this way, but each book in the Valiant series paralleled with a different Bible story. And I realized that God had done that because I did not notice, I did not do that, and I didn't even realize it till I was writing the last two. And so when we realized that Hunter paralleled with the story of Moses, it was like, okay, new, it was just, it shocked us. And so we went back and made sure there were like plenty of foreshadowing in the story and everything, and kind of weaved that theme a little bit more. But I've always related to the story of Moses. I don't know why, it's just, it really connects with me. And so I guess like it was really interesting that that was where the first Valiant book kind of took the direction and went in. So
Yeah. See, I didn't want to give away that it was about Moses, but
I've already revealed that plenty of times, so that's not so much a spoiler. Or at least I hope it's not considered a spoiler. But I've talked about that a lot. So
yeah, no, I love the way that it all played out. And, it was like that moment, like, okay, this is going to take a turn, and it was just really excited. How is he going to do this? And where it didn't seem possible, how it became possible. And that was just great. And it faced a lot of social issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the character development was definitely a challenge. I wrote this a long time ago, so it's hard for me to remember specifics sometimes. But I knew that the development of the character was like the most important part. Both of the main characters, the bad guys, that it had to be a realistic development that they went through, basically. So.
So did you traditionally publish or self-publish?
Actually, I did both. At first, I self-published because I kept getting rejections, and it was kind of crushing, and I didn't know how to launch a book or anything. It was just put it on Amazon, see what happens. And so, but then it got accepted by Ambassador International. They are a Christian publishing company, and them with all their authors, they're basically like a family, and it's been really touching because I've gotten to know them. I've gotten to know a lot of Ambassador International authors, and they loved, they actually accepted the second book first, Shifter, because I wrote the series where you could read the books in any order except for the last four. And so I was just submitting Hunter and Shifter like crazy. And they accepted Shifter, and they said, well, is this technically the second book? And I said, technically speaking, yeah, if you want to go with the timeline. So they read Hunter, they loved it, they accepted it, and that's kind of how they republished it. And they took on Shifter, and ever since then they've been interested. So they're working on the third book to the Valiant series now. But there's 17 books, so we got a while to go.
I know, publishing must be so hard.
It is. I find marketing the most difficult part of my job. I prefer to just sit and write books, honestly. But I got to make a living out of it. So that's, we got to market. So.
How long does it take you to write a book now?
Interesting question. Before it takes me about 3 months or so, but this year I've been doing something called the Million Word Challenge, which is where you write 1,000,000 words in a year. And I made it even harder because I accidentally did it last year with my blog articles and my short stories and all this stuff. And I wanted to do it just with novels. So only books that I'm writing 50,000 words in would count toward this challenge. And I wanted to do it so that I had time off at the end of the year. So I was doing 1,000,000 words in shorter than a year. And so I ended up writing 4,000 words a day. I finished about, I haven't actually counted, probably 10 to 15 books this year. And so I write a 50,000 word novel about every 2 weeks at 4,000 words a day. So I actually only have about 3 more books to go. I'm at 840,000 words so far since January 1st. So I'm hoping to push myself and get it finished by July and have the rest of the year off. But because 20 novels in a year, that's good. I can take the rest of the year and just relax. But so this year I've actually gotten faster at writing if I want to. But after this, I really have no reason to. So I'm probably going to relax and just take my 2 to 3 months to finish a book.
Wow, still 2 to 3 months. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
How did you come up with it? Can't imagine writing 1,000,000 words in a year. But How did you come up with Hunter in the first place?
I really loved the Hunger Games. When I read books, I can't help but think about how would I do this book? How would I write this? And it's annoying because that keeps me from getting into reading a lot of books because I'm like, oh, I would do this idea. And it's not arrogant, it's just the way my brain works. And so I read the Hunger Games and I loved it, but I didn't like that it was televised. I didn't like that it was kind of immature because there were teens. I like writing characters my own age. And I wanted to see that the people were more oppressed. And so that's where I developed my own world where they were oppressed. They were like miserable. There was no telling who would be taken or when. And it was only the boys and men taken. So it really forced the women to step up because they were the ones left at home to raise the children, to find food, to go out hunting, to risk their lives. And sometimes the women are just outright killed because the RA tool have no use for them. So it was a very, very dangerous world for everybody to be living in. And especially if you were a young boy, about 14, that's the age that you start, okay, maybe I shouldn't go out and hunt for my family because I could get taken. And I just really loved that concept. And I also love Mulan. That's my favorite Disney movie of all time. And disguising herself as a man to save her father in the army, I was like, well, that's cliche. People have done that before. And I have a later Valiant book that I do that concept again anyway. So I was like, what if she's saving her brother instead of her father? And, and what if she's has to go in this arena, not kind of like voluntarily like Katniss did, but like in a different way. And she can't let them know that she's a woman because no woman's ever broken into Zagra before. So that's kind of where I meshed the two ideas together and then made it my own from there.
Yeah, you could definitely see a little bit of the Hunger Games. Actually, I thought it alluded to it, but then it totally broke away into its thing. But really well done, great character development. I really started to understand each of the characters, how they fit in, and then the mastermind behind it all. It's really,
thank you.
Very good.
Yes, thank you.
So who was your favorite character? Do you have one?
Yes, Jared. He stuck with me. 17 books in the entire Valiant series, and I'm still stuck on Jared. Like, as I was writing the rest of the series, later the Chosen all come together. And he was the character that stuck with me through them all. And I don't know if it's because he was my first or, it's just, I relate to him a lot. And I mean, obviously I'm not like him because he's, kills people and stuff for a living, basically. But there's just something about him that I feel like as human beings, we all sin and we all fall short of, God's perfection and stuff. And it's through God that we can be forgiven and that we can change and we can become new people. But, there's a side to us that's dark. And so I feel like Jared's more relatable than most people want to admit in a way, in the sense of, that we all have the dark desires within us, I guess. And I've always loved the story of a character like him, where you're an antagonist and you find out more about the backstory than you think, and just the throwing him in with the prisoners and letting him see another world because killing is all he's ever known. And I've always loved that style of character. I'm a huge fan of Darth Vader from Star Wars, so I guess it's that type of character that really appeals to me. And I've probably reused that type of trope in my writing over and over again, but it's one that I love so much. So
what I liked about the characters was it's like when you travel, you meet up with people who are similarly minded. And that's how all these characters met at this horrendous place. And things can go wrong when you're on vacation, but you kind of create this group and you all get through it together. And then there's that one person who's probably never really traveled before, who's been stuck somewhere that you kind of just take along with you, which is what happens when he comes to the group. But I thought it was so well done at how that type of character wouldn't understand the kindness that these strangers gave for looking out for each other, for pulling each other back and, helping them.
I really liked that.
That was so well done, because it wasn't, it could have been just like blatantly there, but you just drew us into the story and you did it in a really dynamic way where it was so believable, and it's exactly what would happen in that situation.
Thank you. I really like to write realistically speaking. I mean, we're in a fantasy world and we can have all kinds of magic and powers being thrown out there, but I almost OCD about being realistic. Okay, like if magic existed, if this happened, if this was real, how would this actually play out? And I'm constantly like, anymore I'm working with my husband, and just I really want to get realistic with it as much as possible, even if it's, crazy magic everywhere. So thank you.
Yeah, and I love some of the fantasy characters that were weaved in, and the dark side of them that you took into the story. It was really good.
Thank you.
So what's next on your agenda? How many books do you have in this series together?
17, actually. So the third book in the Valiant series is going to be coming out next year, I hope. It's in the editing phase right now, but it's like 120,000 words long, so the editing is going to be a while. And Shifter, book 2, that follows Hunter, it has a short story ending called Reclaimed, and it's actually going to be published next month on July 24th. So I haven't done the cover reveal for it yet. I'm going to be doing that soon. And because I have a habit of ending these books on cliffhangers, because the main storyline would just move on and I wouldn't have time to kind of show that world and what else happened on it after the story is over, because we jump to another world like crazy. Every single book, it's a new world. And so each book has its own short story ending that kind of ties up loose ends for the readers who are like, wait, hold on, what happened back on Averell? Tell me, hello? Like, we can't just move on to Shifter yet. And so that's where, Sightless ended Hunter, and then Reclaimed is going to end Shifter. So those short stories are going to be coming out. Reclaimed is going to be on July 24th. And book 3, Samurai, is hopefully going to be out next year. But like I said, the editing's a little slow. So we'll see how long it takes. But there's 17 books, so it's probably going to be a long time getting these out there. But they're already fully written. So I'm actually writing other stuff now. I'm just waiting for them to be published.
Great, because when you leave us with a cliffhanger, we don't like to wait too long. But you did a very good job at tying up loose ends and letting us know where a good amount of the characters were.
I tried so hard.
Yeah, but it was still like, oh, where is the next one? It's just one of those series that really draws you in. So it was really exciting how you came up with that.
Thank you. I am really bad at ending things, actually, and I don't like to end them, so I just kind of ended at a cliffhanger with a twist, and that's just kind of how I work. I hate actually ending happy and tying everything up and, 100%, so.
Yeah, well, with 17 novels in this series, we can definitely see that in you. 17?
Yes.
That's amazing. But I think in the fantasy world now, fans really like those longer series because you invest in the characters and you want to know more. There's got to be more. They're not dead yet. I want more.
Yes. Basically. So I spent 7 years writing the entire series, so.
Oh, great. Not 3 months.
Yeah, not 3 months.
That's wonderful. So what do you have for suggestions for young writers?
Don't give up. Writing is difficult, not just the writing part, but the whole putting your book out there and letting your heart be on the line. And if you submit to publishers, you're going to get rejected. You have to hold on and just wait for that time when you're going to get accepted. And if you're self-publishing, you're going to get bad reviews at some point in your life. It's unavoidable. And so through everything, you have to keep writing, just keep doing, and hold on to that part of you that just is passionate for writing. I don't think you would make it as a writer and be able to handle all of this if you weren't passionate for it at some point, in some way, I mean. So just keep writing and don't stop writing, and write for you. It's so important. Yes, you got to write for your readers and do things, but if you're not into the story, if you're writing something you don't like, it's gonna be, there's that lack of passion and that lack of fire underneath. It's not gonna exist. So write for you and keep writing. Don't give up.
Well, how do you handle a bad review? Do you not read it all through?
I read them and then I take them to heart and I get upset, and I probably, sometimes if they're really bad, I'll cry. And in a couple hours, couple days, I'll just move on and keep writing and keep trying. In some cases, if they're more respectful in the way that they handle it, I'll take their criticism to heart. It depends on how it's worded. If it's just negative, then I try not to take that too seriously. But I do take what they're saying into consideration and try to go from there, basically. So
yeah, every little bit helps. I think rejection as an author and an actor, any of those fields, actually rejection in general is tough to take.
It really is, because you want to be accepted. In the case of a writer, you want people to love your book as much as you do, and sometimes that's not the case. I mean, sometimes books aren't for everybody. So it's just something that you have to deal with. And as an author, it's something that you have to deal with, that you will face at some point.
No, but I was so impressed. You've definitely found your niche. I expected the author to be much older with a world of experience. So it's impressive. You should be really proud of yourself. I can't wait to read more in the series.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Series.
Yes.
It's really
Thank you.
beautiful.
That means a lot.
Oh, good. Well, thanks for joining us today and sharing so much about how you achieve this with our surprising twists and angles.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, keep asking questions. And if you want a great fantasy novel to read, especially a Christian one, Hunter, a Valiant series, will definitely get you hooked. And there's 17 in the series, so you won't be bored. We'll see you soon.